My name is Sammy Ijaz, and I'm your host of House of Politics. House of Politics is a talk show that brings on elected government officials to see what they've accomplished so far in their careers and those things they've learned in the past. Today, joining me is Paul Sharman, who's the regional councillor for Ward 5 in Burlington. Paul, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Sammy?
Good, Paul. Paul, thank you so much for being here. I want you to give me the best wink that you have in that camera.
The best wink?
The best wink.
Oh.
Wow, Paul, that was a good wink. Paul, if I take you right back to where you were born, where'd you grow up, and where'd you go to school, whether it was middle school, high school, university, I want to know everything about you.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Yes.
I was born in Britain. I was brought up there. I went to one of those fancy schools where they teach you to speak properly.
Yeah.
I moved to Canada in 1974 and moved around Canada, ended up living in Ottawa for a while.
Right.
And then I moved to Oakville, and I lived in Oakville for 20 years.
Wow.
And then I moved to the United States, where I was running a big not-for-profit corporation down there.
Okay.
And when I came back, I thought, where do I want to live? I want to live in Burlington. So that's where I got to in 2008.
Right, right. So now, 2008, you moved to Burlington?
Yes.
And then prior to your 2010 election, what did you do prior to that as a career?
Well, we'd set up a new corporation in Burlington.
Okay.
And you will recall in 2008, in the fall, the credit markets melted.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, our target market collapsed. And so I was sitting there thinking, okay, I'll just ride this out and have fun.
Right.
Get involved with community activities that I never had time to do before.
Right, right.
And the next thing I know is the former mayor, or one former mayor before that, even called me up one night. I was out at dinner, and he said to me, hey, why don't you run for council? I said, why would I do that? He said, well, we'll talk about it. And then a few weeks later, we talked again. And I said, well, what do you need to know to become a councillor?
Right.
And he told me that too.
Yeah.
So I ran and I won.
That's fantastic. And this was your first time running?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, what's your favorite thing about Burlington?
Oh my gosh, I love Burlington.
Yeah?
You know, during campaigns, you knock on everybody's door.
Right.
And you say, well, what can we do better? And they always say, well, I love Burlington.
Right.
And people are just so kind and family oriented.
Right.
You know, when we cross Burl Oak, right, from Oakville into Burlington,
right,
you can breathe the air more freely, and it's you just feel more relaxed.
Right. Now, you said that one of the mayors called you up and said what you need to run, etc., and he gave you all the rundown. Let's talk a little bit about the structure of Burlington. I mean, I'm from Milton's, and I know Milton and Oakville's structure is the same, but Burlington's structure when it comes down to council is different than these two cities. So run through that for me.
Well, so in Oakville and in Milton, you have 2 councillors for each ward.
Right.
Right. So
you've got a regional and regional local, and then just a local.
Oh yeah, the first one, the regional, and is also a local.
Also a local.
Whereas then you have a local who is not a regional. Where in Burlington, we only have regional, local combined. So we only have 6 councillors in the mayor.
And 6 wards.
In 6 wards, and we all sit on both councils and all committees. And it's fantastic. We all sit on the same committees, so we all listen to the same information.
Right. So the decision making is a lot easier, whereas if, let's say, someone's sitting on local and a slight issue of regional does come into the local concept, you're able to make a decision more wisely.
Sure.
That's pretty cool. What's the front burner concern in Burlington for Ward 5?
In Ward 5, we have an aging population, which is true throughout the city.
Right.
South of the QEW, probably 30% of the population are seniors.
Right.
And the burning platform is really simple. The percentage of people over the age of 65 is going to double in the next 20 years and doesn't peak for 30.
Wow.
And the primary driver of patient load in the hospitals and the healthcare system is people over the age of 80. And that peaks in about the next 15 to 20 years.
Right.
And it's going to quadruple.
Right.
And we can't quadruple the number of doctors and nurses and surgical wards and all of those things. So we have to find whole new ways to keep people well and out of the healthcare system.
Right. Now, what's the average age in Burlington?
Oh, my
approximately.
Gosh. Probably about 60, something like that.
See, in Milton, it's a drastic change. Ours is about 34,
yes.
33. So our issues are a little different, and with that average age, is there with the new government that has come in on the provincial level, the transfers that are coming down into the region and the local government, is there a cut on healthcare?
There's been some impact on regional costs and budgets,
Right.
but primarily the region has always been paying more than our fair share.
Right,
So
right.
other municipalities are suffering more
Right.
from the changes than we are, but
Right.
we're getting some impact.
Right. Do you have any passion for climate change?
I have. Oh my gosh! So in 2015, we are the first community,
Right.
municipality, to
Right.
create a strategic plan for the
Right.
community, not to get politicians reelected.
Right.
But it has a 25-year strategic planning horizon. So we built in there a commitment
Right.
to be net carbon neutral by 2040.
Right.
For all city operations, but in addition to have a plan for the
Right.
entire community.
Right. Now, 2010, you got elected. Today's 2019. What would you tell me is the transformation that Burlington has faced? I mean, you're at 185,000 people today. Paint that transformation. You've been through that 9 years. Paint that transformation for me and the viewers.
Oh my goodness. The transformation actually has been the recognition that we're built out.
Right.
We have no more greenfield space to build houses.
Right.
And so we've become the slowest growing population in
Right.
the GTHA.
Right.
What that means is now we have to face increasing taxes.
Right.
We have to find ways to intensify housing. And that's chaos. People don't want high buildings.
Right.
They don't want to have lots of people living close together.
Right.
So we're trying to struggle with how to make that work.
Right.
That's a big issue for us.
Right. And now there are, I'm sure, high-rise buildings coming into Burlington. I know there are tons that are coming into Milton. What's your take on high-rise and the, I guess, growth in Burlington? I know it has slowed down amongst the other Halton cities and towns. What's your take on high-rise buildings, and do you believe there might be an influx of population growth if this type of infrastructure and residential growth does get created?
So let's start off the answer by talking about climate change.
Right.
We are built out.
Right.
The most efficient use of land space is
Right.
high-rise buildings.
Right.
The most efficient use of energy is in high-rise buildings.
Right.
So from that perspective, high-rise buildings are a good thing.
Right.
The second thing is that because we're built out, our land values are increasing rapidly. And
Right.
because we're slow growing, because people are enjoying their single-family homes,
Right.
that is also increasing property values.
Right.
And because we got the lake and Spencer
Right.
Smith Park, our property values down by the lake are skyrocketing.
Right.
So the question is, where are our children and grandchildren going to live?
Right.
One,
With the prices of
with
homes.
the prices,
Right.
and I mean the property, a single-family home away from the lake is $1 million now.
Right, right.
But then you got to deal with the folks who are aging there now, with 30% of the people south
So
of
old homes.
New Street, old people. They're getting ready to move out, but
Right.
we've got nowhere for them to live.
Right.
And Grimsby is not where they want to be.
Right.
And Grimsby doesn't want them either.
Right. So would you say in that whole idea of residential concept, we want to have certain places like high-rise for the youngsters, certain places that we would allot to, let's say, the elderly for old homes? Is that something in the works?
Well, you have to have homes that will be good for 40, 50 years.
Right.
And they have to work for both young people and
Right.
older people right now.
Right.
But they have to be in the right place.
Right.
And the place that we expect to grow is around the GO station, so
Right.
what they'll call major transit station areas.
Right.
And we can probably put 25,000 people around the 3 GO stations.
Right.
So Aldershot, Burlington GO, and Appleby GO.
And how is your GO station? Because when we talk about places like Milton, where the population growth has been massive, people do complain about the GO station.
Mm-hmm.
Are you having complaints in Burlington about the GO station? Or people are happy with the GO station?
People love our Burlington GO stations because they can get on the trains. And
Right.
The only issue is the Aldershot GO station
Right.
is mostly people coming from Hamilton taking up the parking spots there because they
Right.
can't get on the GO train in Hamilton.
Right. I think parking spots is one of the biggest issues
Yeah.
for GO station, because you could have frequency on trains, but if you don't have anywhere to park, There's nothing much to do there. Now, let's talk about the Paul Sharman, 9 years ago, 2010, versus today, 2019. Tell me some of the things you've learned and some of the things you've achieved in the last 9 years. It's a loaded question.
Oh,
but,
how much time do we have?
We have about 2 minutes to answer this before we go on break.
So the answer is that, I'm a business person. I work for Nortel. I work for large corporations and a consultant, reorganize corporations, and I ran a very large not-for-profit corporation in the United States. So I was well prepared for the transition from being on the fly, making choices, big decisions, everything fast, to now having 10 years, before anything happens. Everything's slow and very controlled. So the thing I've learned is that there is nothing simple about operating a municipality. There are a lot of human issues. It's very much a people business, and we have to be sensitive to the human beings for whom we look after their community. And there's nothing simple about any of it.
And it's not just one community. I mean, if we look at, these towns and cities that are on the West End, let's say even 20 years, 15 years back, the demographics were very different than what they are today.
That's right.
And you are not catering just towards, let's say, one particular type of ethnicity. It's so many different types of ethnicities with so many different problems, and to having faced that is quite interesting. And I think you've done that for almost 9 years now, and I think it's going to be a great time for you in the future as well. If I ask you to take a break, will you be okay with it?
I'm fine doing whatever you want.
Like you're cool with it, right? Like if I go on a break,
you can throw rocks at me. I'll figure out how to deal with it.
Fantastic. We'll be right back after a break. You guys are watching House of Politics. We're here with Paul Sharman, and we're going to ask him about education and a few other things. So stay tuned. Thank you very much. My name is Sammy Ijaz. Welcome back to House of Politics. Join me today is Paul Sharman from Burlington, Ward 5. Paul, thank you for being here. Paul, let's go and talk a little bit about education. Education is something that's very close to my heart. A young individual, graduated about 3 years ago from Highrise University. OSAP was not an issue when I was in university, and it wasn't a long time ago, it was about 3 years ago. But today, every time when I'm talking to these young individuals and these young students, one of the biggest issues they do talk to me about is the cuts on OSAP, where they're shoveling $3,000 to $4,000 a year of their own money into tuition, books, and travel. What's your take on education?
I think education is the foundation of the nation.
Okay.
So if we are not helping our young people get properly educated, then we are failing them. And we're not making our future, the future of a country, sustainable.
So you agree that, you know what, I mean, Canada's known for two main things. You know, what makes a Canadian is a Canadian, the fact that they've got good health care and they've got good education. You take any of these two away, you're not really the nation that people look at. Infrastructure and services, correct this for me. Infrastructure and services are not matching residential growth in Burlington.
There are two types of infrastructure and service. So the region of Halton provides the sewers and water, and specifically sanitary sewers, by the way. The city provides stormwater sewers. But the region also provides the major roads network.
So the regional roads.
The regional roads, exactly. So the city is responsible for city roads, so connectors and you know, residential streets. And we're also responsible for things like recreation centers, the fire department, and those sort of things.
So, but region would also be the police as well, right?
Police and police as well. Ambulances. Yeah, exactly.
Now, so let's talk about more about roads, snow removal, and local transit. These are a few things that, you know, people have issues or concerns with when it comes down to infrastructure or services. How is, one of the biggest, concerns that, these towns and cities do have and the citizens have is snow removal.
Yes.
Is that an issue in Burlington?
Absolutely, it's an issue, and especially last year, because climate change got us into a weekly cycle almost, where it would snow,
right,
and then we'd have freezing rain,
right,
and then it would thaw, and
right,
then it would freeze,
right,
and then the sidewalks became an ice rink, and we had no way to get rid of the ice. Because when you put salt on top of it, it would melt, and then it would freeze, and you'd be back to an ice rink again.
Right. And now local transit?
Transit's a bit of a problem in Burlington because we're relatively wealthy, and the way the city was built, you had residential, you had retail, and you had workplaces, all different, so you had to get in your car to drive. We have about the same number of people riding the bus that we had 30 years ago.
Right.
And the problem is that people want to drive their cars. But there is a group of people who are interested in catching the bus.
Right.
But if you take a look at the number of people who actually ride the bus, every day divided by 365, it's probably about, maybe 2% of the population ride the bus.
Right.
All the time, which means that the large majority do not, which means they don't care about the buses so much. So when it comes to discussions about taxes, it creates a political problem.
Right, because if you provide that service, then now taxes will be much higher.
That's right.
For that 98% that's not actually utilizing the service.
Exactly correct.
You build a community. A builder comes to you and says, I would like to build this community. There's obviously the development levies and charges you guys charge. Why is it that we often see that the development happens and people have already moved in, but the parks are still not finished?
Well, because we don't have the money set aside, or we don't have the land. Parks take a long time. Building parks and rec centers are always lagging population growth. But keep in mind, Burlington has the slowest population growth in the region and in the GTHA, which means that until we actually have a big increase in population, which will be around the GO stations, and there's not going to be a lot of changes in those regards.
So now, what's the reason behind that? That it's not having an influx of people coming into Burlington, because in Milton and in Oakville and in specific other cities, we are having this influx of people moving into the actual town or city. What's happening with Burlington that it's actually slowing down the population growth?
Burlington was the fastest growing municipality up until about 2011. Okay. And at that point, we ran out of greenfield land to build on. So we have almost no greenfield land left, which means the only places that we can actually build now is on infill.
Yeah. Fantastic. So now taxes. How are your taxes like?
Because, we're cheaper than most people around us.
Are people complaining? Or everyone's happy with the taxes?
Well, they always complain.
Okay.
Especially the older people.
Okay.
Right, because they always have the same problem that with respect to having fixed income.
Right.
But because we have slow growth, it means that our property taxes have the potential to rise more quickly than other places because of the need for not only inflation, but in addition to that, we have to fix the road. So we're putting away 1.25%, adding 1.25% each year to the taxes in order to pay for the road maintenance. Because from 1990 to 97, we had 0 tax increases, and had all we've done was put 1% on the taxes each year, put into reserves, we'd have $100 million in the bank accounts today, which we don't have. We have a $126 million gap.
Elected officials, I know that it's something that you are passionate about, and I love you. I mean, gossip is gossip. It's great. I love it. Let's talk about elected officials. You go ahead, run down whichever elected official you want to talk about, whether they are doing good things, whether they're doing bad things. I'm giving you the open floor to say whatever you want, Paul.
All right. So I was a consultant for years. I'm still a consultant. My view of humans is we are only human. Which means we're a mixed bag. And if you take a look at elected officials, if 5 people are running for a seat, one of them will win. So the only qualification you have to have is that you didn't lose. And then so you put a group of people who've just been elected into the same room, and they're a mixed bag. They don't have any particular education necessarily. They may be great people, or wisdom, or accomplishments, or experience, or even seasoning. So they're in there and they're struggling with this massively complex business and trying to struggle with it. Meanwhile, the majority of everything is controlled by law.
Right.
Whether it be provincial law or
federal law, yeah.
or more importantly, bylaws that were established over the decades
right.
By previous councils.
Right.
So probably 95% of everything we touch is already just routine
right.
relative to the legal structure.
Right.
But what happens is the contentious matters
right.
get talked about, and everybody goes, "These people are idiots. Look at those people. Right. What are they doing now?"
Right.
But reality is, those people are just struggling with what they're trying to get through.
Very little control over what's actually happening due to the laws and rules set by the provincial and federal concept of things. And that's really interesting how you mentioned that. I think very few councillors will have the courage to say what you say out loud, because a lot of them would say, you know what about my career? What would people think? But I think a lot of the things that you do say and state are facts. Brings me to the next question. What is that one thing you hope to achieve in 2020? So I didn't say one thing you hope to achieve before the next election, because in 2021, I'm going to have you back here and talk about that one thing you're going to tell me today that you want to achieve in 2020.
Well, everything I do is to transcend elections.
Right.
So how's that? The one thing that I've been working on for the last 6 years, and specifically intensely for the last 3 years, is something called Program of All-Inclusive Care for Elders.
Okay.
And it is a program that's been running in the United States, and it provides 360 degrees surround help for older adults
right.
to keep them out of the healthcare system.
Right.
And the issue is we cannot increase the capacity of the healthcare system by 4 times,
right.
which is going to happen with the population of people over 80. What happens to those people if we don't take care of them? So PACE, we've got our pilot project going in the city of Burlington,
right.
Downtown.
Right.
Now we need to build another probably 10 or 15 centers in Burlington.
Right.
And we need to build thousands of housing units for older adults who
right.
have less resources. 35% of Burlington's population cannot afford private seniors housing.
Right.
We have to fix that. Right. That's my job in 2020.
So there would be a plan that you would present, and it would play out.
Gosh, if it was that easy, it would be great. No, because the city doesn't have much influence over that. We have to work with the federal government
right,
and with the provincial government, and we have
right.
to get funding, and we have to get developers involved. We have
well,
to
yeah,
get
the
land.
transfers have to come from up top.
Huge.
And if developers do come on board, that would be something phenomenally.
Well, there are a lot of people who are in the business of providing housing to seniors,
right.
and they recognize that 35% of the folks cannot afford their
right.
housing,
right.
and they want to help them. So
right.
we've got a lot of people who are interested.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Paul, I want to thank you so much for being here and answering my questions and having a healthy discussion and being open about your views on, how the different towns and cities differ and what your thoughts are on elected officials. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
So much. My name is Sammy Ijaz. I'm the host of House of Politics. Paul was great today. We're going to have another government official next week, so please stay tuned. Leave your comments in the box below, because I love you reading your comments. And if you have any concerns, email us at info@canadaone.tv. Thank you very much.